It's pretty cold here in middle New Zealand. Yes, we're in spring, but yeah, let's just say it's more winter than summer. And it's probably got a lot of the opposite of that for Eddie Jones after the Wallabies were humiliated. It's been described, I just saw on an ABC article talking about the Wallabies humiliation, losing 40 points to 6 versus Wales. In a must-win clash. Let's get that larger context. It's not just that they were smashed by a record defeat, but it was in a match they had to win. You had everything on the line, and you delivered up that. And let's not be too condescending and rude to the Welsh side, but this isn't a world-beating or seemingly world-beating Welsh team. They didn't play a style of rugby. It wasn't made up of a complete type of blitzkrieg from the forwards and through to a demolition in the backs. It was efficient. It was effective. It was good rugby. They played the conditions before them. They took a couple of tries, kicked their goals. They were tight around the breakdown. Just thinking back over it now, and it was like it was a one-way street almost. Didn't seem like there was any significant pressure put on the Welsh unit. And the scoreboard, I mean, says it all. If you say 40 points to 6, you know it's pretty emphatic. And so, barring a miracle, this ABC article said the Wallabies are going home, first time out in the group stage. And that had me thinking and reflecting, it's not a happy day like we're New Zealanders. That's where I'm from, if you didn't pick up the accent. And so Australia and New Zealand have that type of relationship given its proximity and its sporting playing history. However, when we look at rugby and the significance and challenge of rugby in Australia, this is not something to gloat about, to make a big deal about, and to pour scorn on. It is a sad day, really. If the Wallabies were flying high, and then you may have a different view on it, but the Wallabies have been struggling for some time. We've known that. We've seen it in Super Rugby. It isn't like 2003 when we were in Australia and they had the Rugby World Cup at home, when I look forward to 2027 when they will again host the next Rugby World Cup. Rugby was flying through that period. And yes, they were signing league talent, but it was adding. They'd won in 99. So 2003, they were defending champions. And they head into 2027. The likelihood is they'll be knocked out in the group stage for the first time. They'll be at their lowest point. And so there's the mighty has fallen type reflection as I consider what to say in this video. And this is sort of the first video from the weekend, and it's not looking at the contest per se, even the one that preceded, the significant one that preceded it, which is Ireland and South Africa. But there's an overall sort of sense about how the Wallabies have fallen so fast. Like if you'd watched the Wallabies, even though they didn't win, this wasn't how they performed, even in the Rugby Championship, but even further back under Dave Rennie. And so as we think about what has happened, what we've seen in France, I think a lot has to be laid at the feet of Hamish McLennan. Dave Rennie is a very good coach. I would suggest he's a better head coach than Ian Foster. That's just calling it. I've watched Dave Rennie, been in sort of a cultural context, a living cultural context. He coached the provincial team of where I'm domiciled presently, and I've seen him obviously coaching the Chiefs, and he's able to bring people together. Even the Wallabies were coming together. I think it was Brian O'Driscoll I saw on Stan Sport. Tried to find it, but I couldn't. But a message about the Wallaby, this is different from the Wallabies 10 months previously. And at the end of 2022, the Wallabies seemed like they were beginning, they weren't winning, but they were beginning to find it. And at Leon, if I can pull myself together, the shock's still reverberating in my brain. And Leon, it was hard to watch. The Fiji contest stood out to me as well. Not that Fiji won, but how they won. The Fijian scrum, both the starting and the replacements, dominated. So you're seeing these sort of core elements. And the breakdown of players and their ability, when it happens quickly, it's not due to some mysterious stealing of their talent, like Space Jam or some type of animated make-believe. You got to ask what's going on behind the scenes. It seems like the players they don't know each other, so questions have to be asked on selection. Obviously, they didn't bring the experienced players, which, in my opinion, they should have. So there are a number of different angles here, excuse me. So this video is not, it's too soon to sort of pull together and to give some extended diagnosis on the way forward. I mean, even an autopsy it's a bit too close to home, but I think it is a sad point for Australian rugby. And if there is not a willingness to learn from their history, then I think the future is going to be tough. It's tough in Australia, the rugby codes. Excuse me. I'll just die quietly here in front of you. I don't know if necessarily even those who are watching out of the Republic, because they don't have to deal with rugby league from a rugby union perspective. But in this part of the world, rugby league is a viable option, and it is a strong option. It's an option I enjoy on the TV screen. But it does make an impact, especially in Australia. And so they have to battle rugby league for players. They can bring players through their system and then they're taken. And so it is a competitive market with AFL and A-League, so football, soccer, and other sporting codes that are now beginning to even have a stronger seepage, like basketball down under. So they have to battle a competitive market, so it's not easy. So they need a good product. They need something that is going to compel. And they have a strong, I guess you'd say a strong culture at the club level, which was, you could say, the foundation, the bedrock of their rugby, which then flowed into two teams, New South Wales and Queensland, and then when the Brumbies were added. And that's when probably Australian rugby was at its strongest. The extra team probably was enough. So 3 teams in Australia provides the talent pool or condenses the talent pool so that you not only see the stronger players or their stronger players are represented, but they actually play together. Because when it was just New South Wales and Queensland, you had 2 teams. A little bit like State of Origin and Rugby League. State of Origin and Rugby League is New South Wales, Queensland. It's the battle. And that's generally the platform that will inform the Kangaroos, I was going to say Wallabies. The Kangaroos, which is the Australian Rugby League team. Yes, they come from clubland because it's more disconnected there. And so the State of Origin is at one part of the year, and often test matches between the nations are a different part of the year. However, if rugby had 2 teams in Australia, even though you may miss out on some talent, even though it may narrow sort of the playing field, those players would know each other. And I think the one thing, I think it's Uruguay. I'm not sure if it's any of the other smaller nations, but where the club team plays in the larger competition, and so they play a lot together. So you've got some who come in from outside, but it's mostly this unit that know and have played rugby regularly together. And I think the difference in Australian rugby hasn't been their talent, it's been their togetherness. It's been this sort of group identity. It's been almost a willingness to say, hey, we aren't in the centre of the rugby orbit where we're from, and we're going to play a little bit like outsiders. We're going to play a distinctive brand that suits us. We're going to put it together in our own way, and it's going to work. And instead, what's happened is they've almost lost that genius, lost that eccentric element, and instead have seeking to mass market the code and to grow the code in such a way which has just diluted what they've got, but also lost that difference maker. The difference maker that showed through in how their individuals played, where for me, watching them closely and having to deal with getting beaten by them was sometimes like, they're beating us. When we look at our talent, we look at our athletes, we're thinking, how can they, because it's not just how big your biceps are, or, you know, what your various skill set of either foot is, or whatever metric you want to use, but it's how the parts are put together. And if you can form a game plan and execute that game plan under pressure, because you know each other and you know how to perform, then that can be the difference maker. So just a sort of a general response video to what's transpired. A sad day for rugby, sad day for Australian rugby. Great for Wales. I mean, they're going to be, the North is growing, and there are going to be some pretty realistic reflections. The fact that the Rugby World Cup's in Australia next time is probably maybe the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, because that may be the catalyst that can invigorate or reinvigorate the game in this part of the world, or in the Australian part of the world. And it's a lesson, it's a sober lesson for anyone else, even for those in my neck of the woods, which has seen the game being impacted just even recently, more so recently, maybe post 2015, maybe post 2019 even. And things can change quickly. And the challenges of concussion, the challenges of other codes, the challenges of other locations where rugby can be played and you can earn more money are real for this part of the world. And while we're maybe big market rugby-wise in New Zealand, we're not big market in terms of our culture. You know where we're from, you know where we reside on the planet, and yeah, we are at that location where people love to get away from, but not where necessarily large numbers can congregate. So, the Wallabies losing 40 points to 6 to Wales. A shocking defeat, really. A wonderful result for the Valleys. And it's good to see Anscombe kicking most of his goals. Be positive for Warren Ball, for Mr. Gatlin, who returned after probably a less than successful time with the Chiefs. And they and Fiji look like they should go through. I mean, it's going to take something that maybe is even more shocking than the two recent results for the Wallabies. So, what say you on Australian rugby? I mean, I know this is a general, so you can go with a number of different angles. This is not prescriptive per se, although I've offered some elements. Maybe you want to talk about the change, or maybe the actions of Hamish McLennan, and he seemed to be the driver in removing Dave Rennie and wanting to get Eddie Jones, wanting to have a local and to try and build around that identity. I think they misunderstood how successful Dave Rennie really was and what he was building. I think if he was there still now, and through 2027, that's an opportunity lost. And maybe I'll talk about that in another video. But even as I say that, I sit back and I think, I think that will be something where regret could be tinged with even more than sadness. So what's going to happen with Eddie? Eddie's staying on? Well, let's see. I don't think if Eddie's got the stomach for it and the ability to be able to play the long game, then what the Wallabies need is to build something that's maybe slow and steady, but can last and can test and can stand the test and can last the test that time generally only provides. So, what say you? The result? Go wherever you want with it, but it's a sad day for rugby in Australia. I'm Johnny King.